Is that the sound of duty, or just a flag rope clicking in the wind? Morning sunlight slid across the museum glass, catching the silver badge on an old man's chest as he straightened the visitor's welcome sign until it aligned with the marble seam. Someone scoffed, "He's only security." The words pressed flat against the bright air, still they carried farther than they should. He didn't answer. The door hinge whispered behind him, and the small service coin in his pocket warmed like a heartbeat, remembering its post. Still quiet men leave echoes, too proof, not in medals but in how steady they stand. Morning sunlight drifted through the wide glass doors of the Memorial Veterans Museum, turning dust into slow-moving gold. Outside, a flag lifted once, then hung still in the cool November air. Inside, Frank Dalton, 62, straightened the visitor's welcome sign so it lined perfectly with the marble seam on the floor. His uniform was plain pressed and older than the young manager who hurried toward him. Evan Price, clipboard in hand, barely slowed down. "Sir, please stand aside. You're blocking the procession." Frank turned, voice low and steady. "Just keeping the line steady, son." The manager blinked, already frowning. "We'll handle it. You just keep watch, okay?" His words landed like gravel tossed at a window, sharp, harmless, still enough to make people glance. Two visitors traded a smile and someone whispered, "Old-timers taking his job too serious." Frank didn't answer. He lifted the velvet rope to clear the path, quiet as habit. The silver badge on his chest caught a stripe of sunlight, the reflection folding into red-white-blue before fading again. He noticed it, maybe even cared for a second, then let the thought go. At the reception desk, Megan, the new assistant, looked up from the sign-in sheet. The man she'd greeted every morning suddenly seemed different. His movements measured, deliberate, the kind you don't learn from a security handbook. She watched as he repositioned the stand near the door, aligning it with almost ceremonial precision. Silent beat. A church bell across the street rang 11 times its echo, filling the glass lobby. The visitors quieted for a moment, without knowing why. Evan exhaled, tapping his pen. "Let's move, folks, big day today." Frank nodded once, accepting the order like he'd been accepting orders his whole life. He stepped back to the side of the doorway, eyes scanning the room, entrances, exits, the edges where people gathered. No one saw the small notebook tucked in his breast pocket, the one with a faded army seal pressed into the cover. Eye rest marker, but Megan noticed the steadiness in him, that still water calm that doesn't come from training manuals. She wrote something absent-mindedly on her pad. "Knows what he's doing." A family passed through, thanking Evan. The young manager smiled proudly, unaware that the old man had already managed everything before the first guest arrived. Frank turned slightly toward the window. His reflection stood beside the flag outside, one living, one waving. He breathed out slow. The moment stretched, held, then let go. The bell's final note faded into quiet. Megan's pen stopped moving. Evan was already gone. Late morning light thinned through the lobby windows, turning reflections into pale ghosts across the exhibits. Frank Dalton moved slowly along the display wall, dusting as he went. His rag barely touched the surface, the motion respectful, like greeting old friends who had stood guard longer than he had. The glass of one frame caught his eye, a black and white photograph of the 101st Logistics Unit, uniformed men smiling beneath a painted banner that read, "Apply lines, keep us alive." Frank's fingertips brushed the edge of the frame. "Morning, boys," he murmured, voice almost a breath. A clipped voice sliced through the quiet. Evan Price again. "Sir, please don't touch the exhibits." Frank turned, cloth still in hand. "Just saying hello," he said gently. "Old habit." Evan's jaw tightened. "Those are museum artifacts, not reunion photos." His words hung sharp and official, loud enough for visitors to notice. Two teenagers looked over, snickering softly. From behind the counter, Megan winced. She stepped closer, half apologetic. "He's fine, Mr. Price. He was just dusting." Evan lowered his voice, but not the tension. "Every vet thinks he's still on duty," he muttered. Megan forced a polite smile, uncertain. "Maybe that's not the worst thing," he sighed. "We just have to follow procedure." Frank heard every word. He didn't flinch, didn't argue. The cloth folded neatly back into his pocket, same as tucking away a salute. Silent beat. The overhead lights flickered, bouncing off his silver badge, white-blue, a trace of scarlet. Narrator soft, he was slammed by protocol, not by anger. He exhaled slowly, eyes shifting from the frame to the hallway beyond. Somewhere down the corridor, a tour guide spoke to a group of students about heroes of the past. Frank paused, listening. The phrase caught something inside him, tugged like an old knot. "I rest marker, then." Then a small voice near the entrance whispered, "Was he one of them?" The question belonged to a boy no older than 10, pointing toward Frank. His mother hushed him quickly. "Don't stare." Frank smiled faintly, adjusting his cap. "I used to work with people like them," he said softly. "Guess we all do what we can." The boy blinked, unsure what that meant, but sensing it mattered. Evan returned, clipboard ready, pretending not to have heard. "Mr. Dalton, you can take a break. We'll handle this section." "Sure thing," Frank replied. He stepped back, slow, measured, almost ceremonial. Megan's eyes followed him as he moved toward the next corridor, the quiet rhythm of his boots echoing against the polished floor. The faint reflection of the 101st photo lingered on the glass behind him, two worlds overlapping, past and present, both standing at ease. He stopped beside the elevator, watching sunlight slide down the flag in the atrium. For a moment, the light touched his badge again, brighter this time, as if refusing to let him disappear into shadow. Narrator radio warm. Some lessons don't retire. They just wait for someone to remember. The lunch crowd drifted in and out of the Memorial Veterans Museum, their chatter mixing with the hum of soda machines. Sunlight moved across the floor in slow stripes, catching the faint gleam of polished plaques. Frank Dalton stood near the main corridor, scanning quietly, as he always did, one eye on the exits, the other on the crowd. His calm had a pattern like clockwork that forgot how to rush. A sudden noise, metal chair scraping, then a sharp gasp. Near the photo gallery, an older man stumbled forward, hand to his chest. A paper cup tumbled, splashing coffee across the tiles. "Sir," someone shouted. Evan froze. "Call someone, security, do something." Frank was already moving. "Call medical, clear this aisle." The voice carried, not loud, but full of command that left no room for confusion. Megan dropped her clipboard and turned to help. Visitors shuffled aside instinctively. Within seconds, Frank knelt beside the man, checking his breathing. His hands moved steady, firm. "Sir, stay with me. Help's coming." The panic in the room shrank to a hush. Evan, still holding his phone, looked lost between duty and hesitation. "I rest marker, then." Then Frank looked up. "Ambulance is on the way." Evan nodded, voice small. Yeah, they said 3 minutes." Frank gave a single nod. "That's plenty. Keep folks back, let him breathe. No shouting, no chaos. Just stillness moving through the crowd like air after thunder." When the paramedics arrived, the path was already clear. People followed Frank's gestures as if they'd rehearsed it. The gurney rolled out smoothly, wheels whispering against the floor. Evan exhaled, shoulders dropping. Frank stepped aside, wiping his hands on a napkin someone had handed him. He said quietly, almost to himself, "Order matters when hearts panic." Megan turned, watching him. The words didn't sound like advice, more like memory. She walked off, then came back with 2 paper cups of coffee, one steaming, one already half cold. "Here," she said. "You sure you're not secretly in charge here, Frank?" He smiled, eyes gentle. "Just security, ma'am. That's plenty." She laughed, a soft sound, half relief. Around them, the hum of normal life resumed, the echo of footsteps, the faraway hiss of the vending machine. For a moment, everything felt ordinary again, though everyone somehow stood a little straighter. Frank leaned against the wall near the window, holding the coffee cup loosely. The sunlight hit his sleeve, then glinted off something small in his breast pocket. A dull brass coin etched faintly with an eagle crest. He turned it once in his palm, thumb tracing the edge like an old habit. I rest marker still. Still, he tucked it away before anyone noticed. The room didn't need another speech. The quiet was doing enough talking. Evan passed by, clearing his throat. "Thanks for handling that." I froze. Frank nodded. "You did fine. Happens to everyone the first time." Megan smiled at the exchange, sensing something shift between them. Not pride, not apology. Respect, the quiet kind, the kind that stays long after words fade. The afternoon sun had lowered to the museum's western windows, staining the marble floors with honey-colored light. Folding chairs lined the hall, each one waiting for its moment to bear witness. The choir warmed up near the stage, their voices soft and sure. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies. Visitors filled every aisle, and banners of blue and gold swayed gently from the ceiling vents. At the back, Frank Dalton stood near the doors, cap tucked under one arm, his silver badge catching the glow. To anyone watching, he was just security, still quiet, almost invisible in the grandeur of the Veterans Week ceremony. Evan Price, clipboard tight in his grip, moved nervously among the crowd. He double-checked microphones, podium lights, and camera angles. "Everything set?" he asked Megan. She nodded. "All set. You'll do fine." "Let's hope so," he muttered. The choir began their first verse. The air vibrated with the weight of memory. Then the side doors opened. Every head turned as a man in a dark uniform stepped through the medals on his chest like captured sunlight. General Harris, tall, older than time, seemed to allow, paused under the archway. His gaze moved across the hall, past the flags, past the waiting guests, until it stopped at the man standing by the door. A stillness rolled over the room. "Dalton!" The general said, his voice rough with recognition. Sergeant Major Dalton. Evan blinked, confused. Megan turned, mouth parting slightly. Frank straightened his shoulders, the gesture automatic. "Just doing my shift, sir," he answered, voice even, eyes steady. The choir faltered mid-line. Someone dropped a program paper, fluttering to the floor. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then slowly, deliberately, General Harris raised his hand in salute. The crowd froze. Megan's hand went to her mouth. Evan stood motionless, clipboard, lowering, the truth dawning in his eyes. The general held the salute for a long breath before lowering it with quiet respect. "You kept more men alive than medals ever could," he said. Frank shook his head slightly. "Just kept them steady, sir." Then the applause began, not loud at first, but building, echoing against the high ceiling. It wasn't celebration. It was gratitude rediscovered. Evan looked down, shame and admiration tangled together. He whispered, "All this time." Megan smiled through tears, and he never said a word. And in that moment, the salute rewrote the rulebook. The choir picked up their next verse, voices fuller now, as if the melody itself understood. Frank reached into his pocket and pulled out the service coin, the one with the eagle crest and faded edges. It caught the light again alive for the first time in years. He turned it between his fingers, seeing faces in its reflection, men from the 101st, smiling the way they had in that old photograph. The sound of the choir folded into the air, God shed his grace on thee. The applause softened into stillness once more. The general gave one last nod and moved to the podium. Frank stayed where he was watching from the doorway. He didn't need the spotlight. He'd already had his ceremony quiet and complete. Megan approached, voice barely above the hum. "You really were one of them," she said. Frank smiled. "Still am, ma'am. Just a quieter post." He turned the coin over once more before slipping it back into his pocket. The light caught the badge on his chest, red, white, and blue bending together like memory returning home. Morning came soft and clear over the museum's brick facade. The air smelled of polish and coffee. Inside the lobby echoed with small sounds, a stapler, a broom, the faint hum of fluorescent lights finding their rhythm again. At the bulletin board near the entrance, Evan Price pressed a new sheet of paper into place. He smoothed the corners, stepped back, and read the words twice. Respect Hour, 11:00 a.m., daily. Veterans first. He stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, the memory of yesterday's salute still turning over in his chest. Around him the museum was quieter, almost reverent, as if the building itself was still thinking about what it had witnessed. From the choir room down the corridor came the first gentle measures of America the Beautiful. The sopranos practiced the high notes, softly testing the ceiling's echo. Each phrase rose and faded like breath over water. Then Megan entered carrying a framed photograph wrapped in brown paper. Two assistants followed, balancing a small plaque beneath it. She set it on the staff lounge wall, unwrapping the frame with careful hands. Inside was a candid photo of Frank Dalton standing in the lobby doorway, cap tucked under one arm, sunlight touching the badge on his chest. Beneath the picture engraved on brass, he kept them steady. Megan adjusted the frame until it hung level. "Perfect," one of the volunteers whispered. The choir shifted into the second verse. The sound drifted through the vents, warm and distant, a hymn carrying more than harmony. Evan appeared in the doorway, his expression smaller, quieter. He watched Megan for a long second before speaking. "Guess I learned something protocol never taught," he said. She smiled, not looking up. "We all did." He nodded, a faint grin breaking through. "Can't write this kind of thing into a handbook, can you?" "No," she said softly. "You just feel it when it arrives." The choir swelled behind them. "And crown thy good with brotherhood." The words wrapped the hallway in a slow-moving peace. Visitors began to gather again in the lobby, some pausing by the new sign, others glancing at the wall where the framed photo now hung. Nobody announced it. Nobody had to. It was the kind of news that traveled quietly, person to person, like a kindness rediscovered. Frank himself passed by a few minutes later, carrying a box of lost and found items. He paused just long enough to notice the plaque, the photo, the line beneath. His eyes softened. Evan turned suddenly nervous. "Morning, Mr. Dalton." Frank gave a small nod. "Morning, son." He didn't linger, didn't comment. Just straightened the corner of a flag display and kept walking toward the storage hall. The choir's final note trailed behind him, rising up the stairwell like incense. "I rest marker." Still, everyone nearby felt the shift. The museum seemed lighter somehow, its silence a form of, sometimes justice doesn't sound like verdicts or speeches. Sometimes it sounds like a song held just long enough for everyone to listen. The refrain returned once more, quiet but sure. "America, America, Frank paused at the far doorway and looked back only once. The framed note caught a beam of morning light, the brass words glowing as though they'd been waiting for the sun to find them. The day folded itself into gold. Sunlight settled low across the marble floor of the museum, glinting off the new plaque near the main entrance. It was simple the way all honest things are simple in honor of those who served quietly. Beneath it, the reflection of passing visitors rippled like a living dedication. No ceremony, no speeches, just quiet steps and soft voices, each person pausing without knowing exactly why. Frank Dalton stood a few feet away, cap in hand, the weight of the day leaning into his shoulders like an old friend. He'd finished his shift, checked the doors, signed the log. Another day of steady work, another day that looked ordinary from the outside. Still, the air carried something new. Gratitude had settled here, invisible, but certain like dust that caught the light instead of hiding from it. He traced the edge of the plaque with his eyes, remembering the words the general had said the day before. You kept them steady. He smiled a little the way men do when they finally believe it might have been true. Outside, the flag over the museum lifted once in the wind and stayed there, stretching against the amber sky. Across the street, the post office buzzed with end-of-day noise stamps, laughter, the shuffle of envelopes finding their way home. Megan stood at the counter, letter in hand. She wrote a last line in neat blue ink, "Thank you for reminding us what steady really means." She sealed it, pressed a forever stamp in the top corner, and handed it to the clerk. Stepping outside, she almost collided with Frank, who was locking the gate beside the flagpole. She smiled. "Guess I should salute first, huh?" He chuckled, eyes kind. "No need, kid. Just keep it steady." She grinned, slipping her hands into her coat pockets, already learning from the best. He nodded once approval without ceremony and tipped his cap. The gesture was small, but it carried more weight than any parade. The sun touched the museum windows one last time before slipping below the horizon. In the reflection, the plaque seemed to glow from within the engraved words, catching fire for a moment before dimming into calm bronze. The church bell from down the street began to ring slow and clear. From somewhere inside, the choir rehearsed again, "America the Beautiful," softer now, sung for no one in particular. The melody drifted into the street, blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. They thought he was just security, until the world remembered what true service looks like. Because sometimes the truest salute comes from the heart, not the hand. Megan turned once more toward the museum doors. Through the glass, Frank was already gone, his shadow merging with the quiet interior. Only the glow of the plaque remained. I rest marker then. Then the choir reached its final note, a pure thread of harmony that lingered above the street, hanging there like grace refusing to fade. On-screen words appeared against the golden light. Have you ever seen a quiet thank you? If this story moved you, share it forward. Late sunlight washed the museum steps, turning the brass plaque into a mirror of gold. Inside, the choir's soft rehearsal drifted through open doors, part hymn, part memory. Frank Dalton locked the gate, paused, and watched a young man stop to read the words, "In honor of those who served quietly." He smiled, knowing the world still saluted in small ways, a nod, a letter, a life kept steady. And as the bell tolled in the distance, the echo carried one simple truth: the truest salute comes from the heart.